Hello and welcome to another episode of the Electric Norwegian. I'm Mats. So it's a beautiful day. I was thinking, let's unplug and we can have a talk about some Chinese cars. Well, I've driven all of them now, so what do I think? The Chinese car. Something we've been hearing about, well, for forever really, at least for the last 10-15 years or so. There's something called history, and people sometimes forget, myself included. People said the same thing about the Japanese when they came, and then the Koreans when they came around 20 years later, now in the 90s and the 60s, 70s respectively. They learned quickly, and they didn't really, they suddenly delivered a level of quality that was different from what everything Europe and United States and so on made. And so does the Chinese. I mean, we're sitting in the Chinese car now. This Tesla is built there. If you take Xiaoping as a good example, the G3 it's a Model X copy. It's just shrunk it a bit and made it a little bit simpler and smaller. The P7, if you look at the fit and finish and the ride and the suspension and the comfort levels of the car and the noise and the harshness, it's right up there with anything European. It's a really brilliant piece of car. Sure, the infotainment system is good, but as they run their own software, there's a few things lacking, but they'll get there. That's a matter of software. Software is the easiest thing in the world to solve if you just have a good enough team and you know how to work it. But the mechanical bits, they're fantastic. It's very quiet, it's powerful, it rides wonderfully. It's just so amazingly well put together, and the interior and ergonomics of it are very good. And I'm not driven new European cars that are much worse than that. A lot worse, in fact. It costs the same or more. I mean, it's and Xiaoping is, for all intents and purposes, a brand new company. They're, when it's what, 2015 or something like that, it's just crazy. Why? Because they just hire the best people, because they have the capital to do so. Also the Chinese, all of them can't survive, and all of them won't survive. It's a bit like in the early days of the car industry. It was a gazillion companies no one's ever heard of, and all of them are gone. Almost all of them are gone. Or they've been just a brand, owned by a bigger conglomerate. The MG ZS EV is a very, it's a car for those who just want the car. It's an easy, simple kind of car. But the new one, the new Marvel R, it's brilliant, really. I know they have some struggles with the four-wheel drive system on the tri-motor version and so on. Don't know how much of that you can solve with software to the drivetrain. That could be learning curves on the drivetrain, and I'm sure a lot of that can be solved. But as an driving experience, yeah. I mean, take the BMW iX for instance. When you're in iX50 land and all of that, it's a brilliant car, but it's it's a far and above a million NOK for that car. It's a very, very expensive. You're in Porsche Taycan land, basically. You're in Taycan land, just to put it into reference, and it isn't worth that much money. The iX3 that I drove, I was shocked at the amount of cheap plastics in there. Really, I was just, what, is this a BMW? Because I hadn't driven a BMW for a long time, and that was mostly 20-year-old models which had more, I don't know how to put this, coherent build quality in a way. It was kind of, yeah. And if it was plastic, it certainly wasn't that cheap as it was in some parts of the iX. The iX, the big fat beaver, doesn't have those quality problems, but it's a truly brilliant product. The question, what is quality? How do you define quality? Do you define it by the material you surround yourself with, or do you define it from the feel you get of the drive? Like, for instance, the feel in the iX, the suspension setup, the quietness, the level of harshness in the cabin. That's also quality, and that's what's made the Lexus LS400 such a legendary car. It had Toyota internals and switchgear and stuff, but the car in itself, as an experience, it was fantastic, and it still remains one of the best, most comfortable cars ever made. And you can say the same thing about the Hongqi EHS9, and to a certain degree the BYD Tang. Although that has a little bit more road noise, it still is a very well set up car, and it's a pleasant place to be. And the Xpeng P7 is truly magnificent. And then you can look at that thing in front, which is a Peugeot. It's a very competent drive, it's a very, very competent chassis setup, but the infotainment system is shit. The range is, well, can be shockingly bad sometimes, and all of PSAs and EVs are really just mediocre when it comes to efficiency. So Skoda, for instance, they built their name on being not necessarily, well, they started off being cheap and then they went to affordable, and now they're just as expensive as everything else, but they still deliver in many ways. They deliver value for money, whatever that is. And that's what I'm trying to say. A lot of these things are definitions. Where you stand depends on where you sit. And I mean, how do you value different things? And that's what I think the Chinese are so impressive, because they've gone from being crappy copycat, awful, no safety stuff to being serious contenders. The PS7 gives you, okay, the only thing it really lacks out on is charging speed. Everything else is on par or better than its European competitors. The same thing goes for, in some ways, for instance, the Hongqi. The base price is so low that it undercuts everything you really can think of from Europe, and it's bigger than anything else you can think of from Tesla or Ford or anything like that. And it does one thing, and that's comfort, but it does it so well that it doesn't really have competitors. Not at its price point anyway. I'm sure you have to get up to the EQS. I haven't driven that one yet, but that costs a lot more. Again, price. And we know that the Chinese can deliver. BYD is one of the world's biggest manufacturers. And the SAIC group, which own Maxus, which makes sort of decent middle-of-the-road vans and that kind of car stuff, you know, they deliver on efficiency, they deliver a very decent car. I've driven a few of them, and Tesla is doing its own thing. They're best in class at what they do, and then they'll learn how to do everything else, and now they're on a pretty decent level. For the most part, there will always be cars built on a Monday, after all. And when it comes to batteries and all of these things that everyone else struggles with, well, China builds all the batteries in the world, so they don't really have a problem with access to those. Cat, Aura, brand new company, spun off from, I think it's SAIC that owns them, or Great Wall, or one of those massive industry groups in China. Just pop up out of nowhere, build very good product, and then just price them under everything else. The only thing that can touch the Aura Cat, the good cat on price, is an ID3, and that's not as good. It's cheaper on the inside, it doesn't have the equipment, and so on. So if I was, not VW, but if I was Stellantis group, I would be very worried. Because they haven't got their stuff together. They have 2 or 3 EV platforms, none of them pretty any good. Well, Fiat's is actually rather okay. It's the best of the bunch for now. And they just doesn't seem to have a coherent plan to get anywhere. That's the worst bit, really. Doesn't matter how many bands you have if you don't have a plan to get anywhere. Well, the Chinese have a plan, and they have the money to realize it, and they also get the best designers and engineers. So they don't need to go the Tesla route of slowly learning to do anything. They just buy all the talent. If I didn't buy a Tesla, I've said before I would buy the Ford Mustang Mach-E because it's a good car, and it is a very good car. I like it a lot. But I also like the Xpeng P7. It really is brilliant. It just as I said in the video about the Volvo, sometimes things feel right, and the P7 felt right. The ergonomics inside the cabin was brilliant. The ride noise levels were fantastic, especially if you look at the price. Range is good, not outstanding, but good. That's the biggest downside as per now of the Chinese cars, is quick charge levels, charge times. They don't seem yet to have picked up on the next level charging that Europeans and Americans have done, where you can go from 10 to 50% in say 10 minutes like I can. You have preheat, you have all of that. You know, so you can go from 10% to maybe 80 in around somewhere between 20 to 30 minutes. That, of course, Hongqi is working on a preheat function, and they will come with it. It will be a software function, it will be a button in the infotainment system. Push that car, preheats the battery, your charge levels goes up. And you can get maximum speed. It's and you know, I'm sure Xiaoping and everybody else will do what they can to work on that. Of course, the Chinese have have a different car culture than anybody else. Theirs are different to the Europeans, which are different to the Americans, which are different to the Japanese, and so on. So. But of course, they are operating in an international market, increasingly in a global market, and then they must do global models, and they will, and they sort of increasingly are. I haven't driven an Neo because that's in Oslo, and I can't be bothered. It's just too much faff to get it. That's also why I haven't tested the Polestar, like Xpeng and Neo, which are their own unique brands, which isn't backed by anything, which makes it a little bit more risky should they go down. I don't think they will, but anything can happen after all. I'm impressed. I really am impressed, and I'm also impressed how humble these Chinese manufacturers are, and how much they listen to feedback from their retailers, from their customers, to this doesn't work, make an improvement, and they do try and improve what they can as fast as they can. Be very customer focused, and that's just should really be maybe waking some people up sometimes. So that's it, I think. Just thought I would let you know what I think about the Chinese cars. I think they're very good, most of them. I don't think there's variations of good. There's a difference from a MG ZS EV and a Maxus E-Deliver 3, which is a very simple car, to the Hongqi EHS9 and the P7 and the Neo and all of that stuff. They have a range of cars in different markets, but all in all, they deliver, they learn fast, they listen to their customers, they seek to improve themselves and the product. And I don't think you should be afraid of owning or driving one, and if you're curious, then as I always say, test drive and try and borrow one if you want and make up your own decision. So that's it. Thanks for watching. Do comment, subscribe and all of that, and we'll see you in the next one. Take care. Bye bye.